Alright, so I was inspired to this thought when I think I either heard or read a quote from Mark Twain, which was his views on death, which was, I was dead for a million years before I was alive, and it didn't bother me one bit. And I found that to be quite profound. Um, the prospect of being dead, that is, we all know that a lot of people can't really comprehend it because the whole prospect of being dead, at least from all of our points of view, would be your consciousness is not existing, so you would not be around to actually experience the experience of being dead. But a lot of people can't accept that, which is why they invent heaven and things like that. But I think that's exactly how it is, and that death really shouldn't be feared for that reason. There's not going to be any pain. There's not going to be anything. You're just going to not exist. Now, the only thing that you would, I guess, have to fear in the face of death would be the process of dying, which, I mean, it could be quite painful. We just don't fucking know. But I don't think that's the case because everybody who's had a near-death experience doesn't really seem to talk about the whole painful aspect. They talk about seeing like a light at the end of the tunnel and having all these hallucinations and shit. And of course, you know, we can all chalk that up to the brain being depleted of oxygen and the nervous system basically shutting down, which does happen. But no one ever seems to remember any sort of pain, and seeing as the nervous system does shut down, I wouldn't be surprised if there was actually no pain, or like, let's say you get shot by a bullet or something, you feel pain then, but as your nervous system shuts down, the whole feeling just goes away, and you're left with all these beautiful hallucinations and projections of your own mind. So the process of dying itself, based on whatever scant evidence we can accumulate, would actually be a very pleasant one, and death is not something that should be feared at all. That being said, the only reason that you should keep yourself alive is because there's still things that you want to do that obviously you're being dead would prevent you from doing. So what are your thoughts on that?
Gee, what I got out of that is that, from the Mark Twain quote, before we were alive, we were quote-unquote dead for however many years. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is that the state of being not having existing yet is the same exact thing as the state of being dead, except that one comes after your life and one comes before. A lot of people think that the state of being dead is something special, that's something totally different from not having been born yet, but I just don't think that's the case.
I think it's just they just don't want to get rid of it. Like, they already started, they don't want to, end it ever. But
I don't think it's the fact they don't want to end. I think it's the fact that they just can't wrap their minds around it, because it is a pretty difficult thing to wrap your mind around, the prospect of not existing.
You wouldn't even know what's going on, because just like in the Mark Twain quote, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we think about things, we think about them, whenever we think about experiences, let's say, or just things in general, we think about them as if we're experiencing them on some level. And to think about not being able to experience anything is inherently something that you can't experience, and hence you can't think about it as if you're experiencing it, because that would defeat the entire purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something about near-death experience. Like, they see the white light, and that really reminded me of something. Because, I'm not sure if you saw this, but, wait, Vitaly, you were around for my, Russian Atheist channel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of my, proof videos was about near-death experiences. Did you happen to see that one?
I might have. Remind me what you said again?
I can't remember exactly what I said because I had a bunch of material, and in all honesty, I still have it. So I remember distinctly that near-death experience, you said white light, it's because at the point of death, there's a chemical released in your body. I just can't remember what that chemical is called, which is why I'm looking through so much stuff right now. But I do remember.
For an inhibitor.
You guys can keep on talking about death and stuff.
So yeah. So Christian, any other thoughts on that?
I think when you die, that's it. You don't. There's no going on. There's no. It's pretty much just an attempt to comfort.
Yes, very true.
Well, I don't even think it's an attempt at comfort. I think it's an attempt at understanding, which is going in the completely wrong direction. See, me, for example, I've already given up trying to understand the being dead. Or, you know, I've given up trying to imagine. I mean, I understand I guess the processes involved, vaguely, but you can't really understand the experience because there's nothing to understand. I mean, people, like I said, when people think of things, they automatically think of them in the context of experience. That's just something that this defies. So I think the whole thing with the afterlife isn't really an attempt to. It might be a more comforting thing, I guess, than the alternative. But I think at its core, it's just an attempt to understand the world. But it's a futile attempt, essentially.
I'll agree with that. All the religion was just people trying to make sense of everything they had around them.
Yeah. I mean, you have to remember that, of course, everybody, all atheists, not all atheists, but most atheists, certainly most atheists on YouTube will point to religion and say that it has a lot of repercussions. And some people will even say that those specific repercussions were why religion was designed. But I don't think that's the case, simply because I just can't picture somebody standing there and saying, let's create a society where people are enslaved by the caste system or whatever the case may be with whatever particular religion. I think rather people base their lives around the repercussions that come from the religion rather than the other way around. People create religion first and then society afterwards. 1 second, guys.
All right.
Stop!
Yeah.
Stop!
So I found the chemical that is released.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called ketamine or ketamine. One of those.
1 second. Stop!
See, I understand what he said. He said what?
What does it do?
Let's see. What is not mentioned is that there's a drug called ketamine that produces all of the elements of a near-death experience when it is injected into normal, non-dying people. In other words, in near-death experience is a natural, chemically induced state that the human brain enters. The trigger for a near-death experience is lack of oxygen to the brain and body. That's pretty much all it says right here in the material that I have. But that's what causes the whole flash of light thing.
Right.
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts on fucking anything?
Huh.
Nope.
I think I got one last thought on near-death experiences.
So,
On just the afterlife in general. Let's assume for a second that there is an afterlife, and let's say every single person believed in an afterlife. Actually, no, I shouldn't put it that way. But I'm still wondering about this connection of an afterlife to God. It doesn't seem to confuse Buddhists at all, an afterlife with God, unless you're a Mahayana Buddhist. But it just seems that every religion is like that. Almost every religion.
well, I don't think it's because the afterlife and the prospect of God are intrinsically linked together, but rather I think it's because they come from the same source, which is, like I said before, a need to understand the world. The afterlife is people's way of coping with the intellectual obstacle of death. And God, similarly, or different gods, are primitive people's ways of coping with things in science that can't be explained, like why things exist the way they do, or whether there's a sense of justice in the world. Um, Ranging from like the most mild things to the most disturbing things, of course. I mean, like why certain rivers flow the way they do. Nobody can explain that, but it has to be there for a reason. So people invent gods, and that's a relatively benign thing.